I am presently working on a biography of Periyar E.V. Ramaswamy. Periyar is practically unknown outside Tamil Nadu, but in Tamil Nadu itself, Periyar is a unmistakable figure. There is nobody who can ignore him. If you go to any town or even a village in Tamil Nadu, you will find a statue of a bearded man, and on the pedestal you will find a slogan. It says, "There is no God, there is no God, there is no God. He who worships God is a fool. He who invented God is a scoundrel. He who propagates God is a barbarian." A man who had such strong views and unpopular views is also ironically somebody who is revered in this part of the country. Periyar, meaning venerable one, even though his name is E.V. Ramaswamy or E.V. Ramaswamy Nayakar, he is known as Periyar. People would recognize this man. Periyar had a long life. He was born in 1879 and died in 1973. 94 years he lived. He was part of all the major movements of his life. He began his career, political career, very late, only in the late 19-teens when he was already about 40. He joins the Congress in about 1918 or 1919. He is very much influenced by Mahatma Gandhi. So he is part of the non-cooperation movement, he is part of the Khadi movement. He also becomes first the secretary and then the president of the Tamil Nadu Provincial Congress Committee. But his actual career, which has made him such a important, interesting figure, is that starts only in 1925. He leaves the Congress, and for the next 45 years, or more than that, nearly 50 years, he starts a campaign against caste, against religion, and for the emancipation of women. All through his life, he revelled in expressing unpopular views, shocking people with his views, but at the same time making them think. The guiding principle of his life was reason, Pagattarivu. He said people should question everything. He said question everything. He said question me. So he was one of the most popular public speakers in Tamil Nadu. But the public speaking was very interesting. He would speak in a very colloquial language. Periyar was not a well-read man. He didn't finish school. He never went to college. And he also spoke in a colloquial style. While other public speakers always spoke in the formal register, he would speak in the colloquial register. He would speak for 2 hours and 3 hours. At the end of his speech, after expressing lots of shocking and unpopular views, he would finally say that first he would have a Q&A after the talk. This was also very uncommon. In those days, nobody fielded questions. He would field questions, answer all unpopular questions, and finally say that no, don't take anybody's views at face value, question them. So that was the guiding principle. So he questioned religion, he questioned scriptures, he questioned Puranas, he called for the burning of scriptures. He said the Manusmriti should be burnt. He said that the Ramayana and Mahabharata should be banned. He said that all these texts only preached Brahminical values. They endorsed inequality in society, so they have to be destroyed. So he did not spare any god or any scripture. You may wonder how he managed to pull this off. He was also a very acutely conscious of the political situation. Even though he never participated in elections, he played a very important part in all the elections. He would choose a party or a candidate who he thought would help to further his political goals, his social goals, and he would support them whether the political party wanted his support or not. So this man had such a long life. He also demanded first a separate Dravida Nadu, a separate South India. He also later demanded a separate Tamil Nadu. He was involved in various agitations through the 1950s and 60s. He burnt copies of the constitution. He burnt the Indian national flag. He burned the map of India. He broke the idols of gods. He slippered the images of gods. So he did a whole range of unpopular and shocking, what might be considered shocking things. All this he used to propagate his ideas. This colorful man was in touch with all the major leaders of India. As I said, he was very close to Mahatma Gandhi in the first 10 years of his life. He argued with him, he debated with him. He was a very, very close friend of C. Rajagopalacharya. He was in touch with M.N. Roy. He was in touch with Saklatwala. He was in touch with Ram Manohar Lohia. Lohia came and met him when he was in the hospital in 1957-58. So he was a major figure whom nobody could ignore. But the very strange thing is that I hope you can edit all these things out. But very interestingly, there is no good biography of Periyar in any language, and there is no good biography of him in English. This is actually very surprising in a sense. On the one hand, you have lot of hagiographical work. People who venerate him, they write very laudatory works on him. On the other side, you have people who abuse him. So it's a very polarized, he was a polarizing figure, and so there is no adequate biography meant for the common general reader. So my work is trying to do that. I have been researching his life and work for many decades, but in the last 5-6 years I am focusing on this biography. I have written 5 or 6 chapters. I think the strength of this biography will be that I will use both his copious writings that he wrote. He ran the journal Kudiyarasu, meaning Republic or Democracy, and also Vidudalai, Liberation, for something like 50 years. And I have also used all the government documents. So I am looking at him from his own writings, from what the state collected about him, information about him, and also the views and memoirs of contemporaries. So bringing together all this material, my biography is trying to write a rounded, give a rounded picture of Periyar. It will be situated in the larger political and social history of India and Tamil Nadu. Tamil, even in his own lifetime in 1939, a biography was published. That's a very interesting biography. Subsequently, his disciples have written biographies, but the biographies have many shortcomings. As I said, the first shortcoming is that they are hagiographical. They don't critically examine his life. Then the other shortcoming of these biographies is that they don't explore all the sources. If you write a biography based only on his own writings, it gives you only one side of the picture. We have to look at what others said about him, others wrote about him. What did the colonial state and the post-independent state think about him? How did it handle his agitations? How did it view him? So we are trying to bring all these various sources together so that we can have a rounded picture of his life. I have looked up something like 200,000 pages so far. One can go on looking, but I decided that I am going to cover major repositories of sources, his own writings and the colonial state documents, and that itself will runs it to about 250,000 pages. I have finished something like 80% of the research work, and I have also written 5 or 6 chapters. So by the end of this year, the manuscript should be ready, It is being written for Penguin, and I have a very supportive editor in Sivapriya. So I look forward to completing this biography. It is a very challenging task. In my long writing career of about 30 years, this is the most ambitious project that I have taken up. It is a very demanding book, and it is also a book which is it's a subject on which everybody has views, and all these views are strong views. So it is a challenge for a historian to write a work which takes into account all these things and is not biased to any one side. Yeah, I want to cover his whole life. The record for the early life is a little patchy, and also the very interesting thing is that his first phase in the Congress, despite being the president of the state Congress, the documentation is very sparse. Periyar was the most important non-Brahmin leader in India. He led the most important non-Brahmin movement. He is the precursor for the Mandal Commission report. He consistently argued for reservations. He contended that the Brahmin press blacked him out. That you can actually see. That's why he started his own newspaper in 1925. So until 1925, the record is sparse. Only when he starts his own journal, you find more material. I am covering the entire lifespan. So that is another challenge. In 100 years, the Indian society fundamentally transformed. One has to locate Periyar in that transformation. The very important changes, 1947, India becomes independent. August 15th, 1947, Periyar declared it as a day of mourning. He said, the British, who are neutral, have left. They have left us to the mercy of a Brahmin Raj. That is his position. But very interestingly, it is this very same Periyar in 1972, when India celebrates the silver jubilee of its independence, the government of India gave him the Tamra Pattayam. So this is he was a man, even though he was criticized and reviled on one side, his most strongest enemies and rivals would have the greatest respect for this man. That's one aspect. The other thing is, in 1949, his party suffers a major split. In 1949, Periyar marries a second time. He marries a party cadre who is also a secretary. She is 30 years old at the time and he is 70 years old. He marries her, and as a result of it, the party splits. But the party also splits. This is the pretext for the split. During the 30s and 40s, a number of non-Brahmin youth are drawn to the movement, and all of them have political ambitions. That is what independence is all about. Independence gives the scope for the articulation of political ambitions. But Periyar, all his life, he eschewed electoral politics. He said, if you join electoral politics, you will get compromised and your ideology will be diluted. So he said, I will never contest elections. But the people who joined him were not happy with this. They wanted to join the electoral mainstream and win power. So using this as an excuse, in 1949, the party splits under the leadership of C.N. Annadurai. That becomes the DMK, the Dravida Munnetra Kazhagam, which forms the government in 1967. So the last 25 years of Periyar's life, he struggles single-handedly. He has a bare modicum of organizational structure, but he is a one-man party. And this one-man party, he travels all through Tamil Nadu. Even though he was very unwell all his life, he had a hernia problem, he had urinary problems, His BP was high, he was a little obese. There was not a day when he did not go to some village or town and speak. And when he spoke, he would speak for nothing less than 2.5 or 3 hours. Every year he would launch an agitation. He would challenge the government to take action against him. So the last 25 years of his life, and he broke all accepted forms of etiquette and formality. He would appear in public in a lungi, which is a night dress in Tamil Nadu, because in the last years of his life, his penis was catheterized because of the urinary problem. So somebody would come with a bucket. In those days, they didn't have these pouches. So somebody would come with him. The pipe would be put into that bucket. He would go. He would sit and speak. In the midst of his lecture, he would be in pain. He would howl in pain. Then he would stop and ask, where did I stop? And then the audience will tell him, sir, you are saying this story, this is what you are narrating. Then he would resume. So this is a very colorful life that he led, and I am trying to capture that color.